Are you someone who is entering the job force? Or even someone who's been there a while but is thinking about switching jobs? If so, then you need a resume. This informational video is going to go over how to create a resume, first by discussing all of the separate parts, and then by looking at some examples of resumes. So, a resume, if you don't know, is an employer's first look at you as an applicant and a person. It is your chance to sell yourself to the employer, trying to get them to hire you based on the skills and experience that you possess. A resume has different sections that summarize the relevant information about you. Now, notice that I said relevant information. There is a lot of information about you that is not relevant and should not be included on a resume. The information that should be included on a resume includes a heading, education, your qualifications and skills, your work experience, your potential leadership experience, volunteer experience, and then finally, references. We're going to go over each of these parts separately. First up, we have the heading. In the heading, this is where you put your first and last name, your address, your phone number, and your email. The heading contains all of the contact information so that an employer can reach out to you. If you have a cell phone, that is the phone number that you will list in the heading. However, if you only have a home phone or a landline, make sure to list that and make sure that you explain that it's only a landline, as some employers may want to text and they may need to know that detail. When it comes to your email, make sure that you have a professional sounding email address. You want your employer to know that it is you they are emailing and not an email like big boobs with a Z at gmail.com. I recommend putting the heading in the header section of the document. That way it is on every single page if you have more than one page, and you don't have to retype it. This also ensures that the employer has your name and contact information on every page so they don't have to be confused about whose resume they are looking at. The next section is education, where you will include all of the relevant education that you have completed or had, not even that you've completed. If your only education is a high school diploma, you will put the name of the high school you attended and the year you graduated. If you have completed college or trade school, you will put the name of the school and the year you graduated, as well as what your degree was. Once you have started college, you will not include your high school education on your resume anymore. So you only include high school if that's the only education that you have had. If you started college, but you ended up dropping out or not finishing due to whatever the reason, you will still include that college experience on the resume. But in this case, you will put where you went to school, the years you attended that school, and then the amount of credit hours you finished. And the same goes for if you did not complete high school. You'll put the name of the school you attended and the years that you attended that school. Once we've gone over all of the sections, we will go over different examples of the resumes, and each of the types of education experience will be discussed individually. So if what I've said sounds super confusing or like it makes absolutely no sense at all, don't worry, it will. It's just easier to go over all of the parts individually and then show the examples at the end. So after education, we then get into the qualifications and skills. And so in this section, you want to highlight your soft skills and your hard skills to stand out to an employer. And when you do this, you want to use unique descriptions to help make yourself stand out. So instead of saying, I can do this or I'm really good at this, be like, I am proficient at this or I have advanced knowledge in this area. But you now may be wondering what exactly is a soft skill and a hard skill. And so, soft skills are skills that are necessary for working with others. They're also called interpersonal skills, and they are skills that are not unique to any one job, but are skills that are needed in almost all jobs available. Some examples of soft skills include your team working abilities, your communication skills, and your ability to problem solve. Skills that are needed in all of the jobs out there. And on the opposite hand, hard skills are skills that are necessary for doing specific job duties. You can see these skills in action being used while you are working. So, some examples of these skills would be running a cash register, being able to lift a certain number of pounds, cutting meat, and knowing a certain computer program. You want to highlight both kinds of skills, soft and hard, in this section of the resume. After qualifications, you then want to list your work experience. And so when you list your work experience and work history, you list it so that your most recent job is listed first on the resume. And when you list your experience, you want to list your position name, where you work, when you worked there, or if you still work there, make note of that. And then you also want to list 1 to 3 bullet points of what you did or what you are currently doing at this job. And when you write this, you want to use unique descriptions to highlight your experience and make it stand out to the employer. We already talked about this just previously on the last slide with the qualifications. You want to do that same thing here. You want it to be an interesting thing for the employer to read and not one-dimensional and boring. Once you finish your work experience, you then go into your leadership experience. You may have leadership experience from your time in school or at your time at your job and in the workforce. For example, were you in any organizations or groups in school, both high school or college? Did you get a promotion at work where you are now in a leadership position or now are having to exercise leadership abilities that you did not previously have to? That's the kind of stuff that you would include in this section. And you would list it in the same way you would work experience, and you would explain using bullet points what this experience is. If you do not have any relevant leadership experience to list, that is okay. You just need to have this section if this is experience that you do have. The last kind of experience that you need to list is your volunteer experience. And like the other experience, it gets listed so that the most recent volunteer experience gets listed first on the resume. And so volunteer experience includes things like helping out at a food drive or a clothing drive, helping out at a church event, or doing any kind of work that you did not get paid for. And when you list this volunteer experience, anything is able to be put here, but you have to specify, remember, that if it goes in this section, it's volunteer and you were not being paid for it. And finally, the last section of the resume is the references. And oftentimes the resume and the references are two separate documents altogether, actually. So we're going to talk briefly here about the references, and then that's it. So references are people who can honestly say good things about you as a person, as a volunteer, or as an employee. Good references could consist of your boss, the pastor of your church, or a former teacher from high school or college if you've recently graduated. Bad references would be people like family members, your best friend, or a boss that you didn't really get along with. Your references need to be people who genuinely like you and who know you in a professional rather than a personal setting. Another key thing with your references is also to always ask your references if you can use them as a reference. References should be prepared to talk to a potential employer about your good attributes, and they shouldn't be caught off guard if one calls or emails them. So now that we've talked about the different parts of the resume, we're going to take a look now at some different resume examples. There are four that we're going to go over. The first is someone who is about to graduate high school. The second is someone who just graduated college. The third is someone who did not finish college. And the fourth is someone who did not finish high school. So now we'll go to that. Okay, so we see for this first resume, we see the heading up here. We see that her first and last name, you have Jane Doe, and she lives at 123 North Main Street in Faketown, Iowa. And you have her phone number and her email address. And then you see we have the education. And so remember I said that this first one is of someone who is just about to complete high school. So we have that she is attending Columbus Community High School and that she is in the class of 2021. Her GPA is 3.75 and she is expected to graduate on May 23rd of this year. You can see then that she has her qualifications listed here, and you can see that she's got leadership skills, problem solving, team player, communication, and then proficiency in two kinds of computer programs. We then have her work experience, and we see that she's listed that she is still currently working there, and we see what she did. We then have her high school activities that she's been in, and she lists all of that as well. She also is in the honor roll, and so you can include any relevant awards if you have any. I did not talk about that previously in the video, but if you have those awards, those are things you'll want to list as well. And then finally, she's included her volunteer experience as well. And so the volunteer experience looks really similar to the work experience in terms of layout, but it's differentiated because you were paid for one experience and not paid for the other. So then this second resume is someone who has just completed college. And so the education section looks a little bit different. You can see that she has received her Bachelor of Arts and her major was journalism and her minor was communications. And she got that at Iowa State University in Ames. Her GPA was 3.75 and she graduated on May 17th of 2020. And then we go into the qualifications. They look pretty similar to the other ones, but some of them are worded a little bit differently. We then get into the work experience, and we see that she has a bit more work experience. She has 2 jobs listed here. You see that she was a reporter and that she was the library assistant. And as you become older and you have more experience in the workforce, you will have more experience to list there. So don't be dismayed if you only have 1 job or 2 jobs. More experience comes with more time. We then have her leadership experience from her time at Iowa State University with the different things that she was a leader with. And so that's listed here and that's explained with bullet points. And then we also have her volunteer experience with 2 types of volunteering. And notice that her resume is a little bit longer. Now that is okay because as you graduate college and you gain more experience, both in college and out of college, you're going to have more stuff that you need to include on the resume. This next resume is for someone who did not complete their bachelor's degree at college. So you can see she started at Iowa State University in Ames, and she attended from 2014 to 2017. So she attended college for 3 years and ended up dropping in her junior year. And we see that she completed 75 credits toward a Bachelor of Arts in Journalism. And so this is how you want to list it if you've started college but haven't finished it, or you dropped out for some reason, that you've worked this hard towards your bachelor's, but it just didn't end up working out. Qualifications, again, stay the same because you still have these skills. For this person, they have a lot more work experience. They've been working since, 2012 when they were a junior in high school. Uh, they ended up having to drop out of college for whatever reason. So they've ended up having to work a little bit more. And so we see that she's worked in these jobs. You can see she worked at Casey's in Ames before she transferred back to the Casey's in Columbus Junction, where she currently works. And we see that she also works at the newspaper here in town. You want to list all your relevant experience, and it's okay if you have a lot, especially if you didn't complete an education. More experience is a plus. And for volunteer, we see that she, again, was just the library volunteer. She doesn't have any school activities or school leadership abilities or experience. And remember that that's okay. You only need to include that if you have that and if you possess it. And so finally, this is a resume for someone who did not complete high school. And so we see she started attending Columbus Community High School in Columbus Junction, and she attended from 2014 to 2016. So she dropped out her junior year. She never finished her high school diploma. And so we see her qualifications. And so she still has some good skills and qualifications, but she has less. And that's because, she has completed less schooling, which does mean she's going to miss out on some of those skills that other people have. We then have the work experience, and we see that, she used to work at Casey's as a register, and now she works as a meat cutter at Tyson. And, she's listed what she did and what she does at those jobs. And then she has this food drive volunteer experience as well. And so each resume is going to look different depending on each person's experience and what they've completed in life. Each of the four resumes that we just looked at, were completely different. And there was no right or wrong resume. Depending on your situation, your resume may look different than mine, and that's okay. The resume is meant to highlight your skills, not try to make you feel bad about yourself. Okay, so that's the end of this video. And so this video is intended to help you understand the parts of the resume and help you learn how to create your own. But if after watching this video, you're still a little bit confused or you just want to talk to someone a little bit more about resumes, please do not hesitate to reach out. You can call the Columbus Junction Public Library at 319 728 7972. You can also email Mandy Grimm, the library director, at this email. Or you can come in person during open business hours of the library and someone will gladly assist you. Thank you guys for watching this video, and I hope that resumes seem a bit easier now to understand.